Ryan Upchurch, pro scooterer. Welcome to the Richie Jackson agenda. I don't know if you know, but this is a historic night. On this night, I'm going to formally apologize on behalf of all skateboarders for the mistreatment, degradation, and humiliation of scooter riders over the years. I'd like to cheers you and make inroads to a brighter future.
It's new beginnings.
Absolutely. So, where do we start? Why have skateboarders been so terrible to scooters?
I think it comes from a lot of places. The same reason why even a scooter rider would pick on a scooter rider. It's, I think the difference between ages. It's also, the way that, I think we're brought up and like people around us, right? Like everyone has their own cliques and, sometimes that can, play a factor into the way that, everyone treats each other. But I also think that like more recently, as scooters have gotten bigger, like we've sort of seen a bit of a hero arc, if you're familiar with like the way that like storytelling goes, you have the hero and they're sort of like hated on in the beginning. So scooters were hated by pretty much everyone that had wheels under their feet. We were the new kid on the block. So, we got the sort of the hazing or the, sort of the hate, I guess. But I think it's the same thing that all of those people encountered, when they were coming into it, and it's just passed down. I think a lot of it comes from that.
I think it's precisely the same thing, which is why I find it so odd that skateboarders wouldn't catch that. That hang on a minute, at one point you weren't cool and you were getting hazed by society at large. Now, as a microcosm of that, you're just gonna regurgitate that behavior towards another community because they have two wheels and have handlebars? It seems ludicrous to me.
Yeah, I think that skateboarding was there maybe a couple decades earlier, right? Like the guys in the Lords of Dogtown and, where, skateboarding had its beginnings. It was, sort of the fringe crowd. It was people that were disliked, the forever beef between, cops and skaters that has, been around forever. Why is that? And I think it sort of all starts and stems from there. And, it's worked its way down over the years, but it's just because we're the new kids on the block. And I think that we're sort of like moving out of that phase now where, scooters are, somewhat accepted because, we sort of proven that,
well, this is going to do a lot. This is going to do a lot because I got to say, I remember my coming to scooter God moment. I'll never forget it. It was in Estonia at Simple Session. They announced like all the skaters were there, like waiting our turn, whatever. And there it is. They say, we're going to have a scooter demo. And all the skaters kind of looked at each other like, scooter demo. Like everybody was kind of dismissive and like even just the looks, you could tell like scooter demo. By the end of that scooter demo, every single skater's jaw in that room was on the floor. We're like, we just witnessed a triple backflip. We can't triple backflip. Now, if you need to have handlebars there to do that, then so be it. Later, it was Juzzy Carter. But that was my first moment where I went like, hang on, I need to reevaluate this. And going home and watching Scooter Slam Sundays, I found the comments quite disturbing where they were almost wishing you to die. They're like, I wish that he had have gotten hurt more. And I went, hold on a second. This is pure tribalism. This is something like deeply ingrained in the human condition and not a good thing.
Yeah.
Where they kind of believe that you're lesser than because of the different wheeled device that you ride.
Yeah. I think it's also somewhat of like, it's a threat. It's an outside force, right? It's less space you have at the skate park. It's less space you have in the skate shops if, there is something going on there. And really, I think all action sports sort of come from a place of, it was people just sort of like working the elbow grease for a long time to try and get something going. And now that there is something there, it isn't, substantial. There isn't guys rolling around making millions and billions of dollars from, action sports. But, I think that, that sort of scarcity mindset has, played into a lot of the way that, the interactions have gone over the years. And I see it even within scootering sometimes where, there's riders, especially like when times aren't as good, where people just are a little bit more, touchy about things and, they'll be more standoffish or cliquey or, they'll argue about who should have got the, the spot on the team or, whose video was really best this year. Because that might be the only recognition or sort of like coverage that happens. Like I think there's a lot with like the media coverage side of scootering too, where it has been cast in a pretty bad light for a long time. And even like as recently as like maybe like 6 months ago, we had like a shit show of a contest. Like we've been really unorganized as a sport for a long time. And I think that finally we're starting to come into some of that maturity. Organizations and people that aren't just, excited riders are coming together to, put some real experience to, an industry, having an organization, having, legitimate events where, when a newscast shows up, it isn't like a bunch of kids falling on their face. That's supposed to be like a pro contest, right? Like when people go to, Simple Sessions or one of these other events, they expect to see top tier athletes that are, competing and performing at the, the top of the line levels. And, that's not always what they see. And sometimes I've seen it recently 6 months ago, right? Like we're still getting our act together in the scooter industry. And I think it's something that, as we mature, it'll take time. But, I see a lot of positive things happening, and I'm really excited that, skateboarding has actually started to embrace, scootering to some degree. So
well, I think this is the biggest
tip of the hat for that.
It's going to be embraced too at this point. Today's session was fantastic. We had people on roller skates. We had people on skateboards. We had you on your scooter. You did a backflip. And everything worked. Everything absolutely worked. But I think you're right about the concept of the outside threat. I think, and maybe people don't like looking in the mirror.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like, hey, that's you. Scooter community is the skate community, just a smaller version. But to touch on your point that you made earlier today, you said that there was a closer sense of togetherness when it was more underground. And as money has started to come in, jealousy has become a factor, and that started to fragment and divide the scooter community, correct? Yeah,
and it's actually funny, like when you say that and frame it as we talked about earlier, like it's something that comes to mind is a video I saw like a long time ago of like it was like a lab experiment where they, and not to compare us to animals, but we are animals to some degree, but
we're animals to 100% degree.
Yeah, and more than we'd like to admit sometimes. And I think that's why we don't understand these things fully, right? Because we don't ever look in the mirror to say, oh yeah, we do have a lot of animalistic tendencies and we are tribalistic and we are, those things do come into play, and sometimes without us even acknowledging or realizing those things. But it reminded me of like an experiment I saw of like they have like monkeys in a cage where they give them, grapes. Have you ever seen this?
I love this one.
Because
one baboon gets a grape, the other gets a raisin. And the grape is more valued than the raisin. Now, the one that gets the raisins, he cannot believe that this other guy keeps getting the grape.
Yep.
And it gets to the point where he goes completely batshit, just shaking the cage. So that's what it is. You think it's less about what device we're riding and more just about inequality in general?
Yeah, I just think it's about, just comparison. It's the thief of all joy, like people comparing themselves to other people and saying, I want what he wants, or I want to do what he does, instead of saying like, I want to be me. I want to be more me and understand me better.
100%. And I believe that social media is the biggest demon in this case, because it's doing nothing but make us compare ourselves to other people. Compare us to where they are financially and even physically. You see, like, he's in a place where I would like to be because I don't like where I am right now.
And not even just that, you'd never see people air their problems the same way that they air all of the highlight reels. So you don't really get a realistic perspective of like the way that people are actually living or what their life is like. And
their life is they're miserable in their bed posting on Instagram.
Yeah,
of their vacation, going, please love me.
Unfortunately, that is a lot of the case, and I've seen it happen a lot of times, which is why personally I've sort of veered away from the media side of things, because I saw how it, especially being as young as we are, like when I was first coming up in scooters, and a lot of other guys around me, some of them went that route, some of them didn't, but even just like general YouTubers, watching sort of the progression that they went on, and there is like a lot of self-discovery in that process, but it is very difficult to do that publicly, and also to try and figure yourself out when you have so much input coming at you all the time, and you're looking at video views and all of these other things, which it's how little kids these days, they want to be YouTube stars. They see the success that these guys, they have nice cars, they're going on all these trips. I want to do that. I don't want to work a boring 9 to 5. And that's almost like where I sort of got my start in action sports, where I was like, I can't imagine myself showing up to an office job one day, like I couldn't ever imagine myself doing that. I wanted to solve problems. I wanted to like be face to face with people, and I wanted to, explore myself, and that some of it happens on the scooter, some of it happens off the scooter. And I've sort of just followed that path wherever it took me.
So to clarify, like to say it metaphorically, You were traveling down the road. You saw a fiery wreck up ahead of if you would continue down the social media route, and you took a left.
Yeah.
You took the exit over to graphic design.
Yep. Yeah, I do a lot of graphic design these days, and like I'm a branding coach. I work with a e-commerce company that does education in Australia. So I'm actually up most of the nights when people are sleeping, and I'm sleeping when they're awake. I'm working with the folks in Australia getting their Amazon products looking spiffy.
Exactly. And yet you showed up today and did a backflip on the ramp.
Yeah, after many months not touching the scooter, is actually one that I just built before coming here, and yeah, I haven't rode in quite a while. I was scraping the rust off, but yeah, still glad that I still got a few things that I could do.
The backflip lit the room up. It was incredible.
I appreciate that, man.
I got the best angle of it. Yeah, I just feel like it's been an idiotic, it's such a needless fight, especially when, like, you know, why divide something that's already so tiny? You know, it's like there's one pie. It's about, you know, this big, and we're just gonna let's chop it up more and not be friends. Like, it seems like the most idiotic idea.
Yeah, I've always been more let's grow the pie guy, you know, like,
yes,
because
let's all have the pie.
Yeah, and we just all got to become bakers, you know. You got to know the ingredients to make a pie, and that's what I really love getting into these days, and why I sort of went on to the business side of things is because I was like, I'm riding the scooters, and you know, there's no events happening. There's none of, you know, this, that, or the other happening with the sponsors or the industry as a whole. So I would make it a point to address this to, you know, business owners and other people. I was part of like rider boards when they first started, like the ISA, which was the International Scooter Association, which has changed multiple times since then. Still a bit of a mess, but you know, like that's what improves the experience for, you know, the guys like me that are coming in on, you know, the front end of that are younger. And
but at the same time, you've made massive contributions as far as your riding.
Yeah.
Have you invented a scootering trick?
I've done a lot of world's firsts.
Yes,
but
let's hear them.
Flare quad whip. I was the first person to do a 900 on a quarter pipe.
Yoo!
First person to front flip Travis's mega ramp on a scooter at his house. Flare quint whip. That's added another one, so 5 whips. Yeah, and just litany of other random small tricks, but nothing that's like the pinnacle.
And just like forget scootering for a second. Just think about being a person that's the first person to do something a person has never done. Like, that's incredible however you slice it. Like, that's amazing. We're in the presence of a legend. Now, I don't know what any of those tricks mean. Today, you did what I thought was a nose pick. And I said, is that a nose pick? And I think you yelled back like, no, it's a
toothpick.
And why is that? Like, because obviously it's similar to the skate trick, the nose pick, but who downgraded it to tooth?
That's funny. Like, a lot of like the scooter names are a mesh between skate and BMX, because we have some skate tricks and then we have some BMX tricks. Like the toothpick is actually a BMX term, and same thing with tooth lash. Like, I've always been into pegs, and not many people actually ride pegs on scooters, and obviously skateboards don't have pegs. So we took all of the naming and sort of the, you know, the trick variations from BMX when that was
wow, that kind of makes sense, because it's like, which one do you take the name from? Like, do you take it from the skate nomenclature, or do you take it from the BMX terminology? Like,
I think the way that it worked most of the time was like, we just sat down, whoever was doing a trick for the first time, you know, what is that? What do we call it?
Wow.
You know, is it, and we would look around to see if anyone else has done anything similar on other sports. Sometimes people would come up with their own tricks. Like now, like a bri flip. It's funny, like we took a lot of inspiration from BMX, but now like a bri flip has been brought to bikes, and now that's like a common, you know, trick that you see on like a big air or.
So you're saying that scootering has also given to BMX?
Yeah, and now it's starting to come full circle.
I've seen that happen with surfing. You know, obviously at a time, surfing was always going to be cooler than skating because it was first. You know, skating was an offshoot of surfing. But when you got guys kick flipping and tray flipping, you go, that's our shit. And it's so cool that comes full circle and it ends up back there. I'm trying to think, has a scooter
because we respect that. We've always looked up to skaters. We watch. What do you think? Where do we come from? You know what I'm saying? I had Tony Hawk Pro Skater and played it religiously as a kid. And I went to the Tony Hawk Boom Boom Huck Jam, and I got to see these guys doing it all live and in person in front of me. And that's a way to live, right?
It's almost like having a son and then like, you know, I love you, father. He's like, get out of here. Like, we're like the abusive fathers. I know it's
I'll let you make that judgment.
I'm saying, like, and I've noticed that respect, and I'll say it, I noticed it in BMX as well. I felt like I was one of the first to make inroads there. I got to know Tate Ross Kelly very well and Mike Mastroni and all these guys in Salt Lake. And I was like, what's going on with the beef? And they're like, we don't know. We've always respected you.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind. And I was like, how do you mean? And they're like, in BMX videos, I'm like, the coolest thing about BMX is you can roll in on grass and roll out on grass. And they're like, yeah, we don't do that though, because it looks more like a skate video when you roll up on concrete and roll out on concrete. And I'm like, you're kidding. And then that progressed to the point where I said, but what else? And I remember the big thing being about the pegs.
Yeah.
They're fucking up our ledges, bro. And they said, well, we changed what they were made of for you, so you'd stop complaining about that. They changed it from metal to some sort of carbon fiber or whatever.
Yeah, plastic, something like that.
And do you think skaters noticed or cared? No, like, fuck bugs, bro. So I will say, skaters are dicks. We're your dickhead dad.
They can be sometimes, but scooter riders can be dicks too. You know, there is still like the stereotype didn't come from nowhere either, right? These scooters are the most accessible, I think, you know, like wheeled action sports vehicle, right? You can drop in almost the first day that you do it, right? Whereas like with a skateboard, how long did it take you to land your first ollie or figure that out or drop in on, you know, a quarter pipe or something like that? It's usually a bit bigger of a learning curve. So you actually have to learn etiquette or some process from someone else to actually, you know, get those skills, unless you're all on your own, like on your own quarter pipe at your house or something. But
you just made me realize what it is. Like it's the physics of it. It's 2 contact points versus 4 contact points. Yeah. In a way you're using your whole body. Like a skateboard is just legs, you know?
Well, I just think that the pumping and getting the proper sort of position over top of, you know, the scooter or the skateboard. On a scooter, you can be in almost any position and be fine. Whereas like the balance point is a lot more finite, I think, on a skateboard, because if you lean a little too far back, tailbone's going to get it. You lean a little too far forward, you're just going to hug the ramp. The slip out factor. But the thing that trips me out is the absorption factor. I feel like on a skateboard truck, like you kind of have more levels of absorption. Like yes,
you obviously got your shoes, you've got the wood of the deck, and then you've got the bushings of the trucks. Like, do you guys even have bushings?
Nope.
So the absorption of coming down El Toro on a scooter, what is it? Is it knees and nothing? Urethane from the wheels, and that's it. Which is that thick? Yeah.
Pretty much. So yes, I think scooters, as far as impact goes, you probably get a bit more of that, but you know, getting started is quite a bit easier. Like towards the end, as you're getting to, you know, the top level tricks, I think definitely, skateboarding is going to be way more difficult.
I mean, it just trips me out to think about the physics.
That's why I have so much respect for, like, you know, skaters and the way that they can, you know, do different things. I try and drop in on a skateboard. I've skated for years too, like before I got into scooters, and, you know, I could barely carve around a bowl. So to see someone, you know, like air out and actually do, you know, some real tricks, or, you know, do something super creative, you know, that, you know, you can't even do on a scooter, like that stuff gets me excited.
My friend had a theory about this a long time ago of like what makes skateboarding cool. He was like, because everybody walks through life forwards. He says because surfers were the first to take life on standing sideways. And he kept saying this. He's like, they're the first to stand sideways. And when I think about it, scootering is a twist. Skating, you're standing sideways, you're looking this way. Yeah, I guess it's like, yeah, your hands are here. I don't know. That was his theory. He's like, we're the only ones standing sideways going through life. I don't know how correct he is about that. But he was a tripper. He believed in things like aliens.
Oh, bringing up the alien topic. All right.
Well, let's go deep on that.
Where do we want to start? What do we think aliens are? Are they real? Where would you like to begin?
Start with, I want to know if you think, and let's get this out of the way first. You mentioned that over the course of your scootering career, you've had multiple concussions. I believe you told me 2 handfuls.
Probably, yeah.
So I'd never heard that expression before, 2 handfuls. You've had 10 concussions.
Yeah.
And you said like these actually put you in a rough spot at one point.
Oh yeah, it was definitely, I would get headaches regularly. You know, I would slur my speech. It was actually difficult for me to express my ideas properly. So I took time off and, you know, took care of myself, but it definitely was a bit tough.
And is this around about the time you started seeing aliens all the time?
No.
Okay.
And I don't see them all the time. I had a couple random experiences multiple years apart.
Tell me about them.
With different parties, right? And some of them are a bit more, you know, far out than I think the usual UFO story. I've had, you know, all right, we'll just go through them one by one. All right, so the first UFO story was when I was coming home from the store in Pennsylvania, and I'm with my buddy Dan Barrett, another scooter rider, and we're coming over a hill as we're going back to the house, and we see 3 lights on the horizon, and they're just like 3 dots that are sort of making a triangle shape, and they're really small, but they're really bright for some reason, right? So I'm like, what's that, right? And then they get really big all of a sudden, and I was like, whoa, that isn't normal, right? And it was like bluish lights, and when they got much closer, I was like, is this like one ginormous like craft, or is this like 3 individual crafts? And then no sooner did I ask that question, they took off individually and left blue streaks of light behind them. That was experience number 1.
Okay.
Experience number 2 was maybe about 3 years ago now. It was during, COVID and everything. And just one night, I'm making coffee and I'm looking out the window and I see, weird light in my neighbor's backyard. I'm thinking, oh, someone like breaking in, is like, what's going on? And then I go out to look at it and, it captivated my attention. I'm like, what is this light, right? It wasn't like anything I saw before. It just started out as like sort of a dim orange light, and then became a much brighter orange light, and it's maybe like 5 or 10 feet off the ground. And then, all of a sudden I see like a beam of light like hit the ground right next to it, and then some type of like plasma, something happening, right? It's really difficult to put into words or to explain, but the best way I could explain it is if you've ever seen, the way plasma moves in like YouTube videos, that's probably your closest explanation. But even weirder is that there appeared to be, red and blue, sort of commingling next to each other with some purple in between it that was interacting in some way. Okay. So lots of lights and colors that are even difficult to focus your eyes on. And this was not a solo experience. It was happening for maybe 20 to 30 minutes. So maybe about like 5 minutes into it where I'm like, hey, this is weird. I should probably show someone this or tell someone about this. I get my mom. I'm like, hey, am I losing my shit? Right? Like, let's take a walk out on the back deck. We're talking like 3:30 in the morning. I'm like, what is this? What is it? Right? She had no explanation either. She's just like, I don't know. Aliens? So you tell me, but it's either, I have my theories about it. It could be a number of things. I don't have a fixed belief system about what is or what isn't, because I don't know. I'm the first to admit that I don't know what's happening in this world. I've seen some things that tell me that there's more happening than we know about on the surface. Mm-hmm. So I just like to share my
I liked what you said earlier. You said that consciousness is an emergent phenomenon. Is that what you called it?
Yeah, well,
I don't want to misquote you.
Yeah, I said consciousness is an emergent phenomena, and then...
So I agree with that.
And
because we don't quite know what it is.
Yeah, well, it could be, just something that's like sort of a byproduct of like natural sort of forces in the world that we don't fully understand, electromagnetism, plasma, all of that. And there's actually a lot of technologies coming out. Like if you look at like Randall Carlson, he's on some of the Joe Rogan podcasts. He does he's come up with an energy machine that is a plasmoid generator. So they're actually starting to better understand how to like work with and use plasma. But just understanding that we're like taking the baby steps in that, there's possibly things out there that are already, they've already taken the big leap for their kind. Or it could be, the sectioned off, part of our own, government apparatus, society, whatever you want to call it, right? But I think there's plenty of things that we don't know as lay people that, occurs behind closed doors, or, there's information and technology that people.
So where do you stand on Lazar?
Aware. On the what?
On Bob Lazar.
Oh, Bob Lazar? Yeah. I'm actually not too sure about him. Like, I think he's obviously got, incredible knowledge. He built like a rocket car when he was like, I don't know, like 30 or 40, like you got to have some serious knowledge to be able to like assemble things.
Or some serious cunning. Don't you think he might be cunning enough to
potentially
perfectly design?
And a lot of money can solve a lot of problems. That's why I said I don't know, right? Like I have no hard sort of opinion on people that come out like him that are like whistleblowers and have their own experiences. So I'm just as skeptical of other people's experiences as I am of my own, right? Because
that's a beautiful quote right there. I'm just as skeptical of other people's experiences as I am of my own. That's great. That's something to live by right there. Yeah. Wow. Okay. I'm pretty, but I try to maintain some skepticism and at least some form of base reality. Yep. But where do you stand on simulation theory?
I think we as humans like to use labels a lot, right? Whatever you call it, whatever it is, right? Okay. So our labels are really only a way to further understand it based on something that we can attach it to or know from our previous experience or past. So
when something, it's all built on your previous experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. So with that being the case, it's like where we are now is sort of an inevitability, but it also creates us the, space to make decisions for ourselves. Like I think there's certain forces that the best way that I can describe it is there is, like, if you look at like a sine wave, like the way that like a sine wave happens, like I think life and death, like I use the sine wave as like an analogy for like a lot of things that, sort of like the yin and yang. But if you imagine like life and death being like that line, right? You're living, you have this experience, and then you don't know anything. You don't see anything once you cross that proverbial barrier, but you can almost inevitably, imagine that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So there's something that happens on the other side.
We don't need to invoke mysticism for that. Like, that's straight up science. But whoever created the yin yang, like, do we know who did it?
It's ancient. There's a lot of symbols.
It's too good. The yin yang is too good.
Yeah. And there's
within the darkness.
And as a designer, I found myself getting more and more into understanding like symbology and like the, where a lot of the things that we use and talk about and, learn about, where they actually come from, because usually there's knowledge that's lost along the way. We're taught that in like first grade when we played the telephone game and you'd like talk to the people.
I loved that game. I loved that game. Telephone. It's called Chinese Whispers in Australia. We loved Chinese Whispers. It was so fun. You would start out with one thing, Yeah, okay. Do kids still play that?
I'm sure they're taught it somewhere. I was taught it in, I was in first grade. I remember playing that game. So
I don't think they play.
That's 2001. That's 2001.
I think the telephone plays them.
Yeah. I think that's much more the case.
Yeah, no messages are being distorted via human interaction. Like, that was the funnest thing. We'd all sit in a circle. And I remember when it would get back to the start, everyone would laugh because it had mutated almost always hilariously.
Yeah.
It had always mutated into something absurd. Like, that was what I remember. It was.
What are those things called, like where you fill in like the words, or they're like ad libs or something like that? It almost became like an ad lib where like people just inserted their own ideas on top of whatever the original message was.
It's like misheard lyrics. It's the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that. Well, let's get back to scootering. How great is it? Don't you just love it?
I do love scootering, and I've actually been riding now for 18 years, and I plan to keep on doing it, and pretty much until the day I leave this planet.
What's harder, a tail whip or a 360?
I would say the first tail whip's probably harder.
Yeah?
Yeah.
To get the board. Is it called a board? A deck. It's a deck, right?
Yeah. You know what's harder than a 360 or a tail whip? That's actually surprising, and skateboarders probably wouldn't.
A back 180.
A 180, yeah. Right? Because riding fakie
is ridiculous.
Riding fakie on a scooter it's the most impossible thing when you're trying to figure it out. And if you haven't figured it out yet, it looks like the most ridiculous thing ever. You're just like hopping around. Like
I actually get it, we got to mention Juzzy. Juzzy Carter did a fakie hippie jump.
Yeah.
The sheer mechanics of that are mind-blowing. And I hope people can think about that. Like, if you're a skateboarder, you think you're a badass, whatever, put yourself in that position. You're riding fakie on a scooter, approaching a bar. You jump, and handlebars are high.
Yeah.
So you got to jump higher than your own handlebars. Where are they at? Like about here?
Juzzy has hops. Yeah. They're probably like up to there, especially with Juzzy, because Juzzy, he's quite tall.
Yeah. So when I saw that fakie hippie jump, I went, oh, I get it. Like that's not really attainable by a human being.
Yeah, he's a wizard. Juzzy is officially a wizard. He's had creativity, and like, I don't know, he actually kind of reminds me of like, the reason why I like watching your skateboarding is because you have tricks that, you come up with out of, your brain, right?
Yeah, of course.
It isn't like monkey see, monkey do. Oh, I see that, I'm going to go copy the guy next to me.
No, it's I think therefore I am.
Yes, exactly. You look at the stairs and say, what new ways can I have fun with this?
Yeah.
Right? And I think that is the coolest thing about anything that we do, whether we're on a scooter, a skateboard, or whatever. It's, the ability to adapt and overcome. And, you're throwing your body at something over and over again for, just the glory of knowing that you were able to do it, and that type of discipline, I think, is massive for, young people and, myself included.
Well, what did you really want to say? That there is going to be a war, that scooterers are going to get their revenge?
Never. I think that all action sports are going to see awesome times ahead. We're just going to have, we kind of live in a crazy world right now where, the past couple years we all just went through COVID, and, I think the world has some rebounding to do before we're all living our best lives again. But
yeah, I don't know if that's coming back. I think we got to rebuild from what we got. But you clearly haven't seen the movie Revenge of the Nerds. I'll be honest with you.
I actually haven't.
Well, I'll level with you. Skaters are scared. They're scared that we're going to have to make up for our past sins.
In what ways? What?
Well, we believe that you're going to become the dominant action sports pursuit, and we're going to be a thing of the past.
Skating is always the anchor and will always be the anchor. You don't even understand how many scooter kids watch skate videos religiously and say, I want to be like that. Still, to this day. That never disappeared. Like BMX, same thing. We all watch all the videos now. And it's been that way forever. It's just, I think it's taken some time for everyone to realize it because they're so caught up in, the fear of, there's not enough, for us, or there's, let's grow the pie. Let's not slice the pie. Let's grow the pie.
Don't you think it should be about
but it's about, and it isn't about the pie either, right? Because the best things that have ever come from scootering or action sports, I think, are the relationships, people getting to travel, getting life experiences, getting things that actually matter that are going to last after they stop, pushing someday, when they're in an old home and they're like, I'm glad I did all that. Now I can look back on this, litany of experiences that, made my life something worthwhile, to connect with people that had similar ideas and interests and, be able to bring them up as you're, doing it yourself,
Well, I will say this, the acceptance that I found from the Scoot gang was the best thing ever. I hit up Juzzy because I knew he was in Sydney. I'm like, what are you doing today? He's like, oh, we're around. We're going to go out riding. Do you want to come? I'm like, absolutely. I'm the only guy on the skateboard with about 10 guys on scooters. And it was a blast because, first of all, it was different. There were things for me to learn. I'm like, what's that called? What's that called? What's that called? Same with the BMXers. I would go around Salt Lake City. I'm the only guy on the skateboard, only with a crew of BMXers. And I loved it because, let's face it, if you're around the same thing constantly, it drives you crazy and it drives you to boredom. So I got to see something different. And not only that, but just the raw acceptance that they had of of course you can come with us. Now, imagine if the tables were turned. If a scooter guy goes, hey, can I please come and hang out with the most badass skaters on earth? And, no, you get spit on. I still see videos on Instagram of some scooter kids went to Burnside and got absolutely smoked. Did you see that one?
No, but I've been there before, and we only went at very specific hours when nobody else was there except maybe the guys who live there.
Well, I think these guys might have been looking for a little bit of drama and clouds. They kind of wanted to get shoved or beat up, but also
I can see that happening too.
Well, there were kids that I don't know if this new generation is too coddled or whatever, if they haven't dealt with the kind of shit we did.
I think that's a definite fact.
Yeah.
I'll agree to that one.
Yeah, cheers to that one. They definitely are. They're like, oh my God, that guy pushed you. What is happening? And it's well, you were kind of deliberately provoking for a video.
Well, I think there's a lot of things that people don't get feedback anymore. And like
real world feedback?
Just feedback from other people, right? Because people are afraid to give other people feedback. When you look at even stuff in I don't know, schools, the world at large, right? People are
feedback and criticism.
Yeah, because people get their feelings hurt, and in today's day and age, getting your feelings hurt is equivalent to committing some massive atrocity or some type of crime because you have damaged their identity, in themselves.
Truer words.
You've challenged it, and what happens to a challenger? They get fought, Yeah. So it's people fighting themselves, but they're they take it out on other people because there isn't a reconciliation there. But that's why I'm so excited about I didn't ever like the idea of business or any of that stuff when I was in scooters when I first started out. I just wanted to do the best tricks. I wanted to do I wanted to go high and I wanted to do a bunch of spins and flips and whips and just have an awesome experience, right? But as I got older and came up through it, the interest for me really just got to how can I make a difference and make more of this happen, for other people, and that's how I started video magazines. I did a lot of different things in that respect. And I don't know, it was, I don't know, just connecting with people, I think is the sort of the most important part of it all
I think so too. Yeah.
at the end of the day. And
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
and being able to like pass down the knowledge to, the next generation, the things that we picked up where we thought we've messed up, and, being honest with ourselves in that, and, not giving them the sugar-coated version of things, rather, give them the real version of it. Where did you have your best experiences? Where did you have your worst experiences? Not just one side of it or just a part of it, or, whatever you see on, so-and-so's video promoted by XYZ brand and this, that, the other,
Do you think this has to do with, like, I feel like the time that we're in, like, you can feel it. There's a fundamental separation of reality and whatever the internet is.
Yeah.
Experientially, like emotionally, you can feel it.
Yeah, well, I feel like a lot of people's lives have become a production, right? And that can't sustain forever, right? Like
I don't know, it's not going to continue. It's going to explode. It's going to like diverge to the point where.
Well, I think it allows people to be real people again. It's the pendulum swinging. People get so tired of being impersonal, or tired of looking at their phones. Maybe one day they put it down and say, hey, I want to go outside more. Like I see like a resurgence of people wanting to like start farms and just get outdoors and do things for themselves. Or, I might not be able to make as many little widgets as this factory over here, but I'd like to try. I'd like to figure these things out, because, they're things that are so far removed from us. Like I think one thing that we're robbed of is like people in the West is that we don't understand how a lot of things are made unless you're like particularly, well read in that subject. There's like, I make it a point, in my own life to like look around at what's happening in other parts of the world, look at history, why is it that, things today should be any better than they were, 500 years ago? They're only that way because people decided to do the right things over and over and over again, and it isn't by chance. There's a reason why they did those things. And it's, I think, important for us to understand, the people that have come before us and the people that come after us for, things to come full circle.
Well, maybe it's some karma. We're born into this. I was born in 1985. I was born into the best version of Earth that's ever been. It was Coca-Cola and SeaWorld. Like, it was just, everything's fine. You're safe. And maybe that's it. You get born into such a warm patch of the ocean that you're just taken aback when it starts to go wrong. You're like, this can't be. And it's like, no, through most of human history, it's been suffering, it's been war, it's been death. You just happen to be born in this tiny little blip where it was all good. And now it's just beyond your comprehension that things are maybe starting to go a little bad.
Yeah.
Maybe you got to deal with that.
Yeah. I think those things are happening too, and I think everyone sort of sees that something's going on in the world today,
It's the iPhone, it's the internet. We got to destroy these things. By the way, thanks for watching on your iPhone. It is the conundrum, because we can't ditch the addiction.
No. Well, that's the tough part, is that the addiction has become so early in people's lives too, right? Like I had the privilege.
Oh, they're born addicted.
Well, you came up at a time where you had a childhood before
internet. Yeah.
Internet.
I remember seeing the internet for the first time.
Yeah, I don't remember that. I'm pretty sure it was around about the same time that I came around.
Dude, this is how old I am. There was a rotary phone.
But I had, a good portion of my childhood, and there was already other kids around me that had, phones and all these other little widgets before I did, right? So I had some little glimpse of like a regular childhood before,
a glimpse.
Yeah, but I think the thing that bothers me these days is that I feel like kids rarely get a glimpse of that, or it's only for a little, in a very sort of like tight organized space. They don't have the ability to like go and like figure things out on themselves. They don't like, schools are too afraid to do field trips to like take kids out in nature and like see things because someone might get a cut on their leg or something, or they might trip and fall, and the school will get sued. But
don't you think it's like critical mass at this point? Like, I don't think there's a reversal, at least in our lifetimes. I think this is going to continue. But do you know about the Fermi paradox?
I believe so. That's about like, about life out there.
Yeah,
like
why we can't find it.
Why we don't see it.
And one of the best answers I heard, and I really believe this, they said that the technological arc happens, they realize it's a mistake, and they go back to hunter-gatherer. And they just, if they have the technology, create a cloaking device around the planet and just say, leave us alone. We're just going to live in our own nature.
Yeah.
It's like, because we had this in our heads that the technological arc was, it's the way forward, way forward, way forward. And it was, because it improved life. But it might hit an apex where life gets worse and they go, abandon ship.
Well, I just think that our technology has far surpassed our, wet wiring that we have, right?
This is true, yeah.
Our psychology, our ability to, communicate effectively, all of those things will have to improve before, our use of technology, I think, becomes more self-aware.
Yeah.
Like I actually had a funny thought the other day about like, what AI is, why people are like so freaked out about it.
Yeah.
It's because we're creating like the replacements of ourselves.
Of course it is.
In some degree, but we're worried about AI becoming self-aware, but we haven't become fully self-aware. We're afraid that it's going to beat us.
Of course,
right?
it's going to beat us. Okay, yeah, I was thinking about that too. 100%. And it's going to be flawed as well because it came from a flawed creator. It'll never be perfect. It'll have all the same instincts that we have. These murderous rampages are, something that have been part of human history forever. So we're not going to create a perfect entity by any means.
Nope.
Yeah, we're going to create a more capable, murderous version of ourselves.
And the more that I look, our solutions to things are often masks of the real things, right? Like the way that we treat, like in medicine, a lot of times we treat the symptoms, not the source. Like how often is it that when you go to your, allopathic doctor that they're going to say, hey, let's have a look at what you've been eating this week. Let's have, let's see what your stress levels are at. Let's look at, all these other things that come into what creates those symptoms.
That being said, I have a cure for AI. You ever think about this? So the Earth is mostly made of, like there's a lot of water here, right?
Yeah.
75% water, they say?
Yeah.
The Earth's surface, 75% water. Throw them in the water. They short circuit. They die. The Terminator had laser guns? Just use a hose. Use a fire hose. Short circuit. The killer robots are never going to take us out. If you just dumped a bunch of water on the server room.
But I think that's sort of like the paradox that like this world finds itself in. We need it. It's so ingrained to us at this point that removing it would be like removing an organ from your body, right? Like there's parts of society.
Remove it now. Remove my kidney. If my kidney's AI, take it out. I'm not down personally for AI. You know how it becomes less of a novelty over time. When the AI art first came out, and everyone goes, "Oh my God, look at it! It's amazing."
Yeah.
A week later, they're like, "Eh." Like I don't think it can ever match human creativity.
I agree there, but the problem is it'll drown it out, right? So I kind of like. I don't agree with like throwing everything into the river, but people are going to have to become more self-aware with what's happening, right? Regardless of, whether this goes for the better or for the worse. Like, I just think that as people become more self-aware, whatever future that we have ahead of us will become better as our awareness of ourselves and of each other and our ability to be kind to each other increases.
Ryan Upchurch, everybody. That was beautiful.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
It's been an honor.
That was fucking quotable right there.